why is WordPress so popular? And I've kind of come up with an answer for that. WordPress is an amazing blogging platform and content management system, to be fair. It is a very important part of the PHP ecosystem. But why is WordPress as popular as it is? Because as a developer, and I mean this with as much respect as possible, as a developer, it's not a tool that I would go for straight away. WordPress is built for people that aren't me. Let's pick that apart. So I'm a developer. I like to tinker around with things. I like to get into the engine. Something that I really like about Symfony is the fact that they offer the ability to use like a micro framework where you are in control over the dependencies and the packages that are installed. Now you could say, well, surely that's the same with WordPress because WordPress have plugins. And with the plugins, that gives you more control, and each plugin has settings and whatnot. But have you ever seen the WordPress database? And have you ever seen the code of those plugins? The code of the plugins, not all of them, follow standards. Some of them are written in questionable PHP code. The database itself is optimized for being as flexible as possible. But the problem with that is it becomes archaic, in my opinion. And I mean this with the utmost respect. They have to make these technical decisions and build the platform in this manner for it to fit the purpose that it's trying to serve. But the point is, it's not really serving me as a developer. It's not a tool that I would use. Symfony, Laravel, love them, right? WordPress, if I needed to get something out of the door incredibly quickly, definitely use WordPress. And in fact, I've worked on projects as a contractor. I've worked on many projects where the clients have used WordPress in incredibly interesting ways that aren't actually blogs, where they need to get something out the door very quickly and they need to like market something very quickly, like a new product or a new service that they're doing. Or I've actually worked on places where they've used WordPress as like a members only site, that kind of stuff. And WordPress is the first decision that they make. What platform do we want run this on? Well, WordPress, of course. It boils down to this, in my opinion, it boils down to this: frictionless. WordPress is incredibly, incredibly frictionless. What do I mean by frictionless? Well, you can spin up a VPS and use their one-click install, and within minutes, you have a WordPress site. So really, all you need is content, and you've got something. And it's the same thing with installing WordPress on all sorts of different platforms. So it doesn't matter if you're using DigitalOcean, or if you're using Linode, or if you're using AWS, or even if you're using containers, or if you're using just locally. You can be confident in the fact that there is no friction between you clicking the install button and having something which is usable within minutes. And I put this very close to, and I mean this in the utmost respect, I put this very close to Windows. With Windows, way back in their XP days, or even now, to be fair, but let's go back in time, and XP was such a good operating system, because you could install XP in confidence that it's going to run on many different types of PCs. Windows XP was versatile, it was stable, it was reliable, right? Yes, it had problems. Sure, everything has problems, but you can install it confidently knowing that the keyboard is going to work, the display drivers are going to work, the audio is going to work. Everything is pretty much going to be working out of the box when you install that CD. You can't say that, or you couldn't say that, at least, back in that time, that era, with Linux. Because as soon as you start, I remember when I was installing Linux, way back then, when Linux came on multiple disks, and it would take hours. And you would be constantly hitting brick walls because, things weren't working. Drivers weren't installed. You would have to use the command line. That's insane. Why would you want to do that? Just to install an audio driver. And then you would have to do something with apt-get and repositories. What I'm saying is that XP was frictionless. Linux is built for developers. It isn't now because you've got obviously better iterations of the Linux desktop, definitely, and it's far more user-friendly, but it certainly isn't as user-friendly as Windows or as Mac. Now, the trade-off with all of this is that with Linux, you are in total control. So if you don't want something installed, A, it's probably not going to be installed there in the first place, and B, it's up to you to remove it. It's up to you to secure it. It's up to you to install the things that you need. It's up to you to make sure that the operating system and the software that is being used is good enough and works well enough with the hardware that you've customized. Whereas with Windows, it's just out of the box, boom. Now, I kind of see that very similar to WordPress. WordPress, one-click install, done. And you can customize it as much as you want or as little as you want. Some people just don't even bother. They just have that as a blog. They don't have any inkling or desire to change things under the hood of WordPress. They just click the install button, they give it a username and password, and off you go. And that is fantastic. That is so good for the whole community, the PHP community, to have a product like that is the driving force of the web, essentially. It's fantastic. We should all be proud that is a PHP application. But as I said, it's not developed for me as a developer. Yes, I've built plugins and yes, I've built themes, but I would much prefer that those itches are scratched in other platforms where I know I have a little bit more control. Also, something that terrifies me completely is the fact that with WordPress, and again, this is the frictionless part, WordPress allows clients to update their plugins. So I could build a website for someone and I could charge them for it. And then in a month's time, I come back and I see the whole thing is just terrorized because they've installed half a dozen plugins. Some of them aren't even enabled. Some of them don't even work. And it was the client that's done that. I've had to fix so many WordPress sites in the past where they've just mentioned to me, it's getting a little bit slow. It's getting a bit sluggish. There are certain pages that don't work. And I don't really understand why. I've tried to do this and I've tried to do that. I've tried to install that plugin. I've tried to do this. And it's like someone coming to you to say, can you fix your printer? It's like, oh, okay. Yes. But, there is a market out there for people who are WordPress devs who look after WordPress sites, of course. But it freaks me out that there is the ability for clients that are non-technical people to be able to install things, run migrations in the database behind the scenes, do all of that stuff. That is a bit whoa. But again, I talk about frictionless. It's giving power and control to the clients. Whereas if it was a Symfony site, or if it was something completely different, like a Laravel site, or something totally different, then they would have to say to the developer, yeah, we want to add this new feature in, but because there isn't a plugin directory, we're going to need to get you to develop it. Whereas with a client of WordPress, they could probably just look at the plugins and stuff. Another thing that is fantastic with WordPress, which again goes back to the frictionless stuff, is the fact that you can search for plugins in the WordPress site. The way they've done it is just fantastic. And so we should all be very, very proud. But this is why I think WordPress has done really well. And I think that if anybody wants to build an application, they need to really take into consideration the word frictionless. We want to get your customers to be able to do the thing that we are providing, the product, the service that we are providing in the most frictionless way possible, from sign up to the thing that they want to do. That whole process needs to be as frictionless as possible. So that was my little rant about WordPress. What does everybody else think?